Kol Yisrael vayisbedu lo vayikberu beveito barama vayakom David vayered el midbar Paran. There's a lot of room here to ponder about the point. Why, on the one hand, is this parak connecting to the former parak that Shmuel dies? Is there a connection between this chapter and the former chapter? And number two, why is it that David, after exchanging a word of trust, a shvuah in the name of God apparently, to Shaul, that he will not do anything bad to Shaul, and basically Shaul is acknowledging, admitting to the future kingdom of David, well, why doesn't David go home? He has a house or caravan somewhere in Beit Lechem. So what is the connection here between the two, and how do we answer these two questions? Number one, what we certainly can say is that the fact that Shmuel dies now, he can be rest assured that a fulfillment of his anointing of a king is now coming into fruition. Can Dafka now, after David is recognized by Shaul as the king, well, and now as if Shmuel has been waiting to die, but only now, after that David is acknowledged to be the next king, then he's passing away. That's one point we can possibly understand here. Another point here is the answer to the question, why does David still go hiding? He's in Midbar Paran. Apparently Midbar Paran, we're going to see, is right after the southern Hebron mountains, towards the Negev in the Paran desert. Well, do you understand what's the connection between the passing away of Shmuel and David still running away? As long as what? Shmuel is alive, maybe nothing will happen between Shaul and David, maybe. But now the fact that after the passing away of Shmuel, maybe a new threat of Shaul threatening the life of David has arrived, because right now the owner of the prophecy, the master of the prophecy, is no longer here, and that is Shmuel. As if Chalila Ki'ilu hutar damo shel David, as if the blood of David is now permitted. In this chapter we're about to see right now that there are going to be three major crisis situations we're going to be learning here. Number one, there has to be a crisis situation to David now that Shmuel is dead. Nothing can protect or hover over David. Shmuel is gone. Number two, we're going to see that Shaul's going to give over Michal, who is the wife of David, to another man, as if he is disconnecting David from his family. And three, we have a tremendous, disgraceful situation we're about to see about a VIP living in the southern Hebron mountains with a very interesting, not pleasable name called Naval, with like an ingrate, a disgrace, a villain. And he's meeting up with David. Let's see how he reacts to David. So these are three crisis situations we're about to see. Let's go on. Pasuk Bet and Gimel. V'ish b'ma'onu maseu b'karmel, v'ish gadol me'od, v'lotzon 3,000 ve'elef izim, v'i b'gzoz et sono b'karmel. On the one hand, we have a VIP. He's called an Ish. A Stam Ish is not anyone, but he's a very important man. He's a wealthy man, as Rashi says, and he lives in Ma'on. That's the name of his city. But his factory, his parnasa, his livelihood, is in a different town called Carmel. How important is he? Gadol Me'od. Very wealthy person. How wealthy? Well, look at the livestock he has. 3,000 heads of sheep and 1,000 goats. Wow, that's a lot of milk. And that's a lot of woolen coats or carpets. The Tanakh tells us right now that it's summertime, or the end of the summer in Eretz Yisrael, when it's very hot out, and it's the shearing season when we are shearing the wool off of the backs and the bodies of the matters. So this guy has Aleph. He has sheep. I mean, there's a lot of shepherding to do. He probably has a lot of milking to do. He has a lot of what? Shearing wool to produce things. And you ask yourself, why is it so important for the Tanakh to mention in detail all these matters of his wealth? Well, let me ask you something. Yeah, you with the kippah. if he's such a VIP, if he's such a wealthy person, is it likely or unlikely he knows about David? It's very likely he knows about David. He's a very VIP. By the way, he's living in the area of which tribe? Southern Hebron Mountains. Carmel, Ma'on, it's Yehuda, obviously. Certainly he would know about David. Furthermore, with the passing away of Shmuel, do you think that it became famous that David was secretly anointed as king? It's likely now that after Shmuel dies, people are talking about it, eulogizing him, and those that know about, look at the tremendous show up at his funeral. It says, Vaikavtzu in Pasuk Aleph, Kol Yisrael. All of Israel collected there. They gave him the proper respect at his last meeting, and they eulogized him. So there's a likelihood that word is out that David is king. Maybe there's word out that Shaul in his last encounter even admitted to his kingdom. So maybe let's see and understand how impactful this meeting is. Remember, David does not go home. Why? He senses maybe a threat. So he's traveling towards Midbar Paran, and he has a stopover in the Southern Hebron Mountains, Pasuk Gimel. And we hear about this guy called Naval. We'll know about his name right now. V'shema ish Naval, v'shem ishto Avikayil. Interesting. In one pasuk, what a contrast. On one hand, the name of this person, the name, of course, is a mahut. The name is an essence. And is he called Naval because of his terrible character traits, which we're going to see in a moment?
And also, I thought it's also the name of a musical instrument.
That's a Naval. Very good. So maybe he was called a Naval. And maybe because of his terrible actions that we're about to see, he was called a Naval, which is also short for Nevela, meaning he's a villain, he's a scoundrel, he's a wicked person. Where, interesting, the opposite of his wife's personality, Vaisha Tovat Sechel, Vifat Toar. In other words, she, spiritually and bodily, is like a complete woman. She's a very sharp woman, she has very good character traits, and she's a beautiful looking woman. And just the name Avigail, cut it up into two names. What do you hear? Avi, Gil, the father of happiness. And Gil, Gila, Rina, Ditza v'chedma is another word for rejoicing or happiness. So here we see a very, very, very strict contrast. She, mipchanat nafshit and gufanit, she seems to be the ideal woman. He has a terrible name called Naval, like he's a villain. However, what are you going to be expecting from him? So the Tanakh says in the middle of Gimel, Va'ish Kasheh, he's a hard-nosed person. V'ram alalim, his actions are terrible. Yet it says at the end of the pasuk, Vehu, he's not Chalivi, he's not Pisari either. He Chalibi. Different interpretations are given, Vehu Chalibi. One, you can say, God forbid, he's like a Kelev, a terrible person, a disrespectful person. But in addition, that he may have the nature of a dog. Do you know that the nature of a dog, they hate one another? Dogs don't get along with other dogs. And if a dog has some food, he usually doesn't share with others. And that'll be very, very of the essence of we're about to see this event where Mr. Naval does not want to share of his wealth with someone like David and his supporters. That could be one meaning. However, you might say that it's another meaning, and Rashi brings it. Yes, Mi Beit Kalev. He comes from Kalev. Who was Kalev ben Yefuneh?
Righteous tribe.
A very righteous Jew, head of the tribe of Judah. Very good.
12 spies.
Very good. He's one of two spies that did not speak Lashon Hara on Eretz Yisrael, and they are Yoshua ben Nun and Kalev ben Yefuneh, two leaders of Israel from the Judean tribe that only spoke good about the land of Israel, not willing to speak bad in the sin of the spies about the land of Israel. So what? Right, Kalev was given Hebron. That's right. I remember I once had a student, Kalev. When he sent in his form and he sent me an email, he wanted to be accepted. I didn't, the email doesn't have vowels. His name is Kalev. I said, what's going on? What kind of guy is trying to be accepted and called Kalev? until he spelt it in Hebrew, in English, C-A-L-E-B, Caleb, right?
I've been dying to have another child and name my son Kalev.
Kalev. In any event, so this meaning that it comes from the seed of Kalev may be that in spite of his terrible character and in spite of his terrible actions, maybe there's hope that he comes from the lineage of Kalev, that he might still do some good things. That's what one meaning is. Now, remember, David is still hiding with his hundreds of supporters. Now, he's to be the next king. Rami Levi, you don't have in the southern Hebron mountains. Man has ceased to come down hundreds of years ago. Where will he be able to support himself? So sometimes he has to ask for tzedakah. Now, if you knew who David was and he asked you for tzedakah, would you give him or not?
Yes.
Would be your honor, wouldn't it be? Let's see how Naval acts. Pasuk Daled. Vayishma David bamidbar. Pasuk Daled. What is Vayishma David? What does he hear? Ki gozes Naval. So no. Wow. Why does he hear that he's doing this now? Because this could be an opportune time to go knock on someone's door, Aleph, who's wealthy, and is about to become more wealthy. You know, he's going to make a simcha. For people that are raising sheep, grazing sheep, and it's the season of sharing, it's a time of simcha. They make a yom tov. They make a feast, drinking wine, eating meat, because they're going to be able right now to cash in by selling the wool, selling the milk, and so on and so forth. There's no better time to go to a VIP and ask, could you please help me? I'm to be the next king. Supporters, we need some food. And in any event, he has a big caterer on the job making a big meal for a feast. So that's what David hears. And now David talks to 10 messengers of his own people. 1, Alu Carmela, go up to Carmel, where that's the factory, that's where his business is. Number 2, Uvatem el Naval, you go to a specific person. And I want you to do and ask for 3 things of peace, as we're about to see. Ushaltem lo, you're going to ask, how are you doing? But you're going to send my regards, Bishmi. Why Bishmi? I'm sure a VIP like Naval probably knows me. And I want you to ask, in my name, Lishalom, give him peace. That's the first shalom. Second shalom, Va'amartem ko lechai. What does ko mean? Thus shall it be. Meaning, give him a bracha. May it be this, may you live, and it be this way, meaning for a year from now. May it be this way, kol lechai, may you have chayim, mazal, that next year you're going to have affluence like you have this year. 3, blessing number 3. V'ata shalom uveitcha shalom, v'chol asher lecha shalom. Meaning, may your possessions, may your resources also be going through a process of blessing. These are the careful instructions, all in my name. Not that David is looking for pride or honor, but you have to know how to ask things in the proper way. Pasuk Zayin, ve'ata shamati. He's telling, why are you going now? Because I heard what's going on. I think right now in Pasuk Zayin, it could be that they arrived on the scene. V'ata shamati ki gozezim lach. I think right now in Pasuk Zayin, if I understand correctly, you can correct me please, that right now it could mean that they've arrived on the scene. Okay? Number 1, ata haroim asher lecha. The shepherds that you have. You know what? Hayu imanu. Tell them the story. Do you remember we were with you? We were helping you guys shepherding. Lo echlamnum. Okay? If you needed something, we didn't embarrass you. V'lo nifkad le me'uma. No one of your sheep was missing in action. Why? We helped you watch it. Apparently, Midbar Paran, where David and his hundreds of supporters are hiding out, is right adjacent to the southern Hebron mountains. And apparently they met one another during the time of shepherding. This is a telling of past events. And we helped you guys out. We helped take care of your sheep. Whatever you needed, we gave you. Kol yemei heyotam bar kamel, during the entire period. Shalit na'arecha. Right? Ask your young people, workers, v'yagidu lecha, they'll tell you. No, I think, you know what? No, I go back what I said. These are the story that David is telling his 10 messengers what to tell them. I go back what I said, excuse me, I was mistaken. When you tell them the story, they'll find grace in your eyes. Ki al Yom Tov banu, as you see. Yom Tov, it's like a holiday time. Tanana, and now here's the request you're going to ask. Tanana, please, help me out. Give me. Et asher timtza yadcha lavadedecha. Timtza yadcha, from all your finances, from all your abilities. Can you give us something? But look how David humbles himself. What does he call himself? La'avadecha, at the end of verse 8. Ulevincha leDavid. Very interesting. David is asking for closeness, for a connection, for a bond. In other words, in the way that David is asking for charity, he's showing love, he's showing humility, and he's calling himself, I'm your avadecha, we're your servants. Furthermore, we're bincha, we're your children. There's kirva, we're all part of the tribe of Judah. And maybe when you show love and you show closeness one to another, that's a very important thing. This is the message that the messengers are going. They know exactly to whom to go to, where to go to, what to ask, and what to support. You know what? They're not saying, but you guys owe us. You owe us. Why do you owe us? We helped you out. Shepherding. When there were tough times, you came to us, and our men helped you, support you. Never ever did you lose a lamb or a goat whatsoever. And therefore, maybe David wants to, Naval may want to reciprocate. Let's see what happens. Pasuk Tet, verse 9. Vayavo na'ari David vayidabru el Naval. Kechol advarim ha'ele b'shem David. You notice this? They're exact, they're precise. The message they're bringing is exactly according to the instructions. Don't say they messed up or they muffed this up. After they finish speaking, vayanuchu. What's vayanuchu? They stop speaking. They're silent right now. They're resting. And now they're waiting for a response. Again, we said Naval is a wealthy man. He's an important man. You can't say he doesn't know who David is. David is a warrior, a leader, a magad. He's a mefaked of a gedud. And now it may even be public knowledge that David is the acting king. It could be public knowledge. But what does Naval say? Pasuk Yud, let's read it. Vayan Naval et avdei David vayomer. He says it very calmly, speaking calmly. Mi David, umi ben Yishai. Why? Okay, he's not giving him honor. In other words, you're not important. Rashi says, Mi David, ma'u chashuv, shetein lo et sheli, halo meirut amoaviyahu. Oh boy. Gentlemen, most of
a 9-year-old kid or a 12-year-old kid,
right?
Just like being
he's not important. He's not important. According to Rashi and many of the commentators, what Naval means right here is David by himself does not have importance. Not him, and not from his great grandmother, okay? Who is Ruth Amoaviyah, that she made what conversion? Ruth Moaviyat. Ken, if you study the story of Sefer, Ruth, very good. So at the end of the book, we have a leader, the court leader from Beit Lechem called Boaz.
Oh, that's where our roots come from.
And there he decides to marry, to do the mitzvah of Geula, like Yibum, and redeem Ruth, who is a widow from the famous wealthy family of Elimelech from Beit Lechem, okay? And he's saying here basically, Naval, you're not important by yourself, nor from your ancestors are you important. Why? You come from a convert, Ruth Moaviyah. Wow. Now he says even more. Hayom, do you know what's going on in the country? There's a lot of chutzpah going on. What? Rabu avadim hamitpartzim ish mipnei adonav. Right? He says there are a lot of people revolting now in this generation, but he calls them servants. Rabu avadim. Who do you think he's referring to? Who is revolting against who? David against Shaul. And he calls him an Eved. Wow. That's like hitting him under the belt. In other words, Naval is so disrespectful. And now we can understand if David was right, this David Hayes, that you called, that maybe his name was Naval, a beautiful harp. What is it, harp? And now it's pronounced Naval. It's all because he acts like a villain. He acts like a rasha. He acts like a scoundrel, this guy. Okay? He acts so terrible the way he's speaking. Furthermore, he says, Pasuk Yud Aleph.
So he didn't have to be a Naval. He could have been a Never.
He could have been, but he has freedom of choice. We see how terrible he's acting. Pasuk Yud Aleph, verse 11. V'lakachti, continues Naval to speak. Follow the reading. V'lakachti et lachmi, v'tmeimai, v'tivchati asher tavachti legozazai, v'natati lanashim asher lo yadati, eze me'emeima. It's clear that he's preparing a great catered meal. What do you think? I'm going to take my bread. My bread could mean my meat, and my waters, my drinks, my wine, and the slaughtering the animals that I'm slaughtering today for the event of the sharing, and I'm going to give it to people that don't even know who they are, that they're not important. So here it is. It's a very, very difficult situation here. That what Naval is claiming, that David doesn't have importance. David is just any other person with no importance by himself, and so on and so forth. Gentlemen, Naval is violating something so basic that's part of the Jewish people, and that is Hakarat HaTov. Hakarat HaTov is being appreciative, gracious for good things that are done to you, to us. David has saved the Jewish people. Once against Goliath, in a war when we went to Keilah against the Plishtim army. He's been doing great things. And here, we see someone that he's like an ingrate, right? What is the opposite of Hakarat HaTov? Kafui Tova. Someone who's ingracious. Someone who's an ingrate. The Midrash in Yalkut Shimoni says the following. Minayin ata omer. From where do we know? Shekomi shesipek biyado lasot tzedakah. Whoever has the ability to give charity, but he doesn't give it, he had the ability to feed people. We're talking here about a case of David, hundreds of his supporters who are right now in the desert with no food. They represent the active army of the Jewish people. Because when there was a war against the Plishtim in Keilah, why did David even consider going there? Because Shaul's not functioning. Although another war, when Shaul was ready to grab David, he did function, and he went to war against the Plishtim. But you never know, maybe he can't function now either. So the Midrash asks, where do we know if you have the ability to give charity and support people, and you don't do it, that you deserve almost death? The answer is here. The reply of Naval, and what happens to him later. I don't want to spoil the suspense. I'm not going to tell you what happens to Naval. But he has the ability to give charity. You should know that there's a custom today when something very good happens to you. Let's say you're marrying a child, you're having a great event. You invite a poor person to the wedding. Or you give charity to a certain institution in merit of the new couple that's going to be going under the canopy, or so on and so forth. But here we see how terrible he is. Gentlemen, the 10 messengers hear this reply. They now make a U-turn. Pasuk Yud Bet, verse 12. Vayafchu na'arei David lidarkam. They turn around and they just go back. In other words, they don't even eat something. Right now there's a big catered meal. They've been slaughtering animals, making lamb chops. They have a lot of lambs. A great meal, wine, drinking this. We don't even notice that they're even fed something. Would you imagine? They're asking for charity. Matati yadcha. The giving of your hand is tzedakah, is charity. Nothing. Vayavo, vayagidolo kichol advrei ha'ela. They report back to David and they give a word-to-word report. And now Let's notice the reaction of David, please, and tell me if this reaction we've seen before or not. Pasuk Yud Gimel, verse 13. Vayomer David lanashav. He tells his supporters, okay, guys, chigru ish et charbo. Put your sword on. Vayachkaru ish et charbo. Everyone wears their, what is it called? A what? A sheath? Sheth or sheath? Is that what it's called? A sheath, a sheath. They put on their sheaths, their chagura. They put their cherev inside. Vayachkor gam David et charbo. David is also arming himself. Vaya'alu acharei David. They follow David. Ke'arba ish umatayim. There are 600 supporters. 400 take arms, go with David. 200 remain in their camp, watching whatever valuables or assets they have. Would you please tell me what is David's intention? To enforce. Huh?
I don't know. Maybe it's a question that he made.
Now, I want you, let's ask an honest question. Is this the way David has acted in the past?
No.
Do you remember when two events that happened until now, did David act warfully against Shaul, or did he restrain? He restrained. David kept upon himself that right now, I'm faithful to the Malchut of Shaul, and he never acted. All he did was maybe clip off the corner of the garment. But every time someone went up against him, David acted with havlaga. David acted with restraint. Here against Naval, we see a different reaction. Here, the reaction is instant, immediate. And here it seems that he wants to go ahead and punish Naval. And the question is, why has David changed his management? Why is he managing himself that he's going up right now?
Did he want to wipe out all Naval's family, the woman, the children?
No, probably not. He's not going to give collective punishment. But it's clear that he wants to do din against Naval. But why is he acting differently now?
He's kind of a king now.
Oh, very good. Right now, the rays, of a king are in David's mind. The fact that he tore the cloak of Shaul ends that kingdom. There can't be a political vacuum right now with no one ruling. And right now he's acting as if a king. Now if he's acting like a king, and the king asks for what? Some charity, and you not only disobey, but you belittle him, what is that called? That's the act of treason, isn't it? It's the act of treason. In Hebrew it's called mored b'malchut. If you're rebelling against the kingdom, what do you deserve? Death. Rambam. Explicit Rambam based on the Gemara and Sanhedrin. So it seems that David is now seeing himself as the king, anointed by a prophet. Probably most of Yehuda are supporting him. And probably most of them would even admit that this is the right thing to do. And right now, that's where he's going. Well, yes.
I mean, right now it's about David proving Naval disproving his loyalty to.
Right now, Naval.
If it's true that David has support from the other parts of Judah, that he would get support from them. If it's about the.
He should have gotten support. We're probably sure that after the last event that Shaul admitted to the kingdom of David, and now the death of Shmuel, they're probably saying, what did he do during his lifetime? That also probably became public knowledge. And Naval's a VIP. He's a wealthy man, an important man. He probably knows who David is. You can't say, well, he's innocent because he's ignorant of who David is. David is famous. He's the famous song of the woman of Israel. Shaul has killed thousands, and David has killed myriads, tens of thousands. He's a public figure. So what's going to happen right now?
Sounds like you never learned to talk like this from somebody else. It looks like you learned to talk like this from Shaul HaMelech.
Shaul didn't.
David and Yishai.
You're right. You're right that there is a parallel to when Yishai, when Shaul was mad at his son Yonatan, and he called him Ben Na'avata Mardut, and he says, and he calls him Ben Shel Yishai, and he doesn't want to give him honor. I don't know if it was in public knowledge, as well, Instagram or emails, the way Shaul spoke about David. My dear friends, word gets out to Abigail, and she seems to be a different personality. Pasuk Yudalid, verse 14. V'lavigail eshet Naval, higid nar echad me'anarim lemor. One of her workers or young workers comes to tell her, Hine, surprise, Shalach David Malachim Midbar levarech et Adonenu. Okay? Do you know that David sent some Malachim here means literally messengers, right? From the desert, the Paran desert, to give a bracha. He asked, may he have shalom, may his bayit have shalom, his properties have shalom. He gave a bracha, and what did your husband do? Vayat b'hem. He chased them away. He gave them a cold shoulder. He didn't give them any honor. Pasuk Tet Vav. Avigail is told more news about David and his men. Ve'anashim tovim lanu meod. These people, the messengers of David, they're good people. V'lo hochlamnu. They never embarrassed us. V'lo pakadnu me'uma. Whenever they're helping us watch the sheep, never ever was there a missing in action. Never ever was a missing lamb. We were with these guys for a long time. They were very good people. She's being told by one of her own people. Pasuk Tet Zayin. Choma. Very interesting expression now. You notice it? In verse 16. Choma ayu aleinu. Gam laila, gam yomam. Kol yemei eyotenu imam ro'ei atzon. Interesting expression. Choma. Okay. Not only did they provide us with food, protection from our enemies when we're in the desert, but they're called the Choma. Choma might be spiritual protection. And the Talmud, the Midrash says, Mikansha tzadikim kruyim Choma. The righteous members of the Jewish people, they're like a wall. A wall is protection, security from the sun, from enemies, from people on the outside. So here, Mrs. Naval, Mrs. Abigail, she's given a full-fledged talk of who David and his men are. Righteous people. They helped us out in the past, and he gave them a cold shoulder and sent them away. V'ata, and now the messenger says in verse Yud Zayin, De'i urei matasi. Wow, all these words in the imperative. De'i urei. Apparently, the time is 1 second, sir. The time is of the essence. You got to make a knowledgeable decision and see what to do. Why? Ki chalta hara'a el Adonenu v'akol beito v'hu ben Blial midaber elav. It's clear that all of these words are towards who? Are towards Naval. You got to think what to do to correct the situation, because right now, since he acted unlawfully, then the Ra is going to come up to him. In other words, David wants to hit him. David wants to do din with him. And this is the message he's told. Yes, David.
So I don't really want to say what I'm saying because I don't
say
necessarily agree with it. But just like the events, I'm assuming Shaul HaMelech already ordered Doeg to murder and to kill out all the Kohanim of Nob.
That was done.
Okay, so maybe Naval's saying, okay, I know David, but maybe who are you? Like, what he's saying, like, Shmuel the Melech, if I say anything and if I give him food, he's going to kill me and my entire family. So, of course, I'm going to tell him no.
You're saying Naval should be afraid of retaliation, of judgment.
If he wiped out all the Kohanim, why wouldn't he wipe out Naval and his... Shaul will come in, so it's like, I have to listen to the king.
So that claim, if it were true, maybe the Tanakh either would say it or hint to it. But the Tanakh tells us of a disgusting person who speaks without any honor. Mi David or mi Ben Yishai. These guys are a bunch of servants revolting against their master. In other words, it's not afraid of judgment or retaliation, but he talks out of chutzpah. I don't have to help him. He's nothing. He's a nothing. I don't have to help him whatsoever. My dear friends, it's a difficult situation right now. Abigail's husband is about to be killed. She's told in the last second about David is about to do din against her husband. How does she act? Pasuk Yudchet, and we'll end the short today with this pasuk. Vatimaher Abigail, vatikach matayim lechem, ushnayim nivle yayin, v'chamesh tzon asuyot, v'chamesh se'im koli, or kali, I'm sorry, u'me'at tzimukim, u'matayim dveilim, v'tasa malacha morim. She gets a real meal ready up and ready on the camel, on the chamor, I'm sorry, and she's about to intercept David en route here. Notice the quantities that she's taking. Matayim lechem, 200 loaves of bread. Shnayim nivleyayin. That doesn't sound like a lot. 2 flasks of wine. Kegs. Those are barrels. The Tanakh would tell us if it was a keg or a barrel. It says nivleyayin. But you know what? When you want to conciliate, when you want to appease someone here, let's drink a l'chaim, let's sit down, let's talk it over. So she brings a little amount of wine, but a lot of bread. And she brings lamb chops. Chamesh tzon asuyot. 5 lambs that are ready. And she brings some popcorn. Is that right? Is that what you see, popcorn? V'chamesh se'im kali. In other words, she took kernels of wheat and she toasted them. Koli, liklot, is to toast, to roast it, in dry heat. Okay? And me'at tzimukim. Me'a what? Just 100 raisins, or is it a quantity of raisins?
Translation: raisin clusters.
Clusters of raisins. That makes more sense, because she's not going to bring, what a cheap steak she is. She's bringing over 100 little raisins, tzimukim, but rather clusters of raisins.
100 boxes.
I see. You used to eat California raisins, the red little boxes. I don't know what you're talking about. I used to eat them 44 years ago. Okay. In any event, and she brings matayim dveilim. Which pri is dveila? We learned in Tu Bishvat. Those are the dry figs. Bekitzur, she loads up the donkey. Apparently, she says, I got to talk this over with David. I'm sure he must be starving. He and his supporters must be starving. And before he comes and kills my husband on an empty stomach, let me feed him something, and maybe I can talk some sense into David not to do din, not to do judgment. We'll continue with this tomorrow, God willing, B'ezrat Hashem.